Welcome back to The Mind, a podcast series by the Ramakrishna Vedanta Centre, New Zealand, a conversation at the meeting point of modern science and the contemplative traditions of yoga and Vedanta. I'm Rama, your host. Last time, the group saw that a perception is a meeting of two waves, the world's and your own. But there's a step hidden before that meeting, and today we go looking for it. Long before your attention reaches a moment, the moment has already passed through everything that has ever happened to you. Your past is not filed away on a shelf. It is a live filter, coloring what you perceive before you notice anything at all. Swamiji will show why a small remark can ring in you for hours, why a scent can drop you straight into childhood, and, most importantly, why this filter, however old, can be reshaped. Saṁskāra as a live filter, how conditioning shapes every perception. Let's join them. The same room, late afternoon light. Dr. Watson's notebook is open again. Kai is turning a pen over and over in his fingers.
Last time I asked you to settle your own wave before a meeting that mattered. 3 breaths and a quiet letting go of the angle of me. What did you find?
I did it in the corridor before a hard consultation. 3 breaths and a deliberate, let me just meet this person. The room genuinely felt different. I listened more and defended less, and she said more than she usually does. Small change in me, real change in the room.
Mine half worked. I settled before talking to my son, and it was better. But the time I forgot, I was already 3 sentences into a reaction before I even knew I'd started. That bothered me. It was like the reaction arrived before I did.
Hold that exact observation, Sarah. The reaction arrived before I did. That is the doorway into today.
Mine was similar. With one parent I find difficult, I arrived open on purpose and it went well. But I noticed the difficulty was loaded before she'd said anything. I was braced from the moment I saw her name on the list.
Same shape for me. Someone used a certain tone and I was annoyed instantly, way before I'd worked out why. By the time I'd decided to be annoyed, I already was.
Then you have all noticed the same thing, and it is precisely our subject. The reaction that arrives before you do. The brace that is loaded before a word is spoken. Today we find out where that comes from and what can be done with it.
Let me put the clinical version on the table. I have patients where something very small happens, a tone, a delay, a particular word, and the response is enormous and lasts for hours. The size of the reaction has almost nothing to do with the size of the event. Where does that come from?
Let's begin with a sound, Doctor. Imagine striking a bell once. What happens?
It rings, and the ring slowly fades.
And every bell rings differently. A small bell, a quick, bright ting that's gone in a second. A great temple bell, a deep tone that hangs in the air for a long time. Strike each one once, the same single tap, and each answers in its own way. That answer, how high it overshoots, how long it rings, the faint hum at the end, is the bell's signature. Now here is the whole of part 1. Your mind has a signature too. Someone says one slightly sharp word. That's the single tap, and you ring. And how big the ring is, how long it lasts, and the faint after hum, that's your signature, not the words.
So when the same comment barely touches one person and floors another, that's 2 different bells.
2 different bells, struck identically. And we can name the 3 things you feel, because naming them is half the freedom. The first is how hard it hits. Does the reaction stay about the size of the event, or does it leap far past it? A mild remark and you feel panic or shame far bigger than the moment calls for. That leap past is the overshoot. The second is how long it rings. Some people sting for a moment and it fades. Others are still turning the remark over hours later. That's the settling time. And the third is the after hum. Even once you've moved on, a faint unease keeps washing back, a small doubt that returns and returns. That's the ripple.
Overshoot, settling time, ripple. That's uncomfortably accurate, actually. I have a very long settling time.
Most thoughtful people recognize themselves somewhere in those three, Kai, and recognizing it is not a fault to confess. It is the instrument coming to know itself. Engineers have a clean picture for it. Think of a car's suspension. Properly set, you hit a bump and the car dips once, smoothly, and settles. That's a well-damped system. Worn out and too soft, you hit the same bump and the car bounces up and down several times before it finally rests. That's under-damped. It overshoots, it rings, it takes far longer to settle. The bump was identical. The suspension was not.
So the work isn't to stop hitting bumps. Life has bumps. It's to change the suspension.
Exactly, James, and that is a hopeful sentence, because suspensions can be tuned. What softens the ring in a mind? Several things, and none of them are exotic. Living in line with your own values helps, because then a hard moment doesn't land on top of a pile of inner conflict. Seeing a situation clearly helps, because you don't add a story of catastrophe to the sting. Slow breathing helps, because it tells the body there's no emergency. Calm, unhurried time helps. And the deepest one of all is simply coming to know your own pattern. When I feel criticized, I get defensive, then ashamed, then angry at myself for being ashamed. That's my ring. The moment you can see the shape, you're no longer only inside it. You're also the one watching it. And what you can watch, you can begin to change.
That reframes my difficult cases entirely. Not, why is this person overreacting, which helps no one, but this is a finely tuned bell that rings long and loud, and ringing can be retuned. I can work with that, and I can say it to a patient without shaming them.
Say it gently, and it lands as relief, doctor. You are not broken. Your bell rings long. Let's learn why, and learn to soften it. That is a very different medicine from, what is wrong with you?
Come back to the reaction arrived before I did. Where was it waiting? Because it honestly did not feel like I chose it.
You didn't choose it in the moment, Sarah, because it had already been applied before the moment reached you. Remember last time, a perception is the world's wave meeting your wave. What we left out is that the world's wave does not arrive raw. Before it ever reaches your attention, it passes through the whole field of what has happened to you, every past version of this situation, and comes out already coloured. You never hear the bare comment. You hear the comment plus your entire history with comments like it.
Say that with an example, because I see it in marking all the time.
Take it, James. It's yours. You hand back the same honest feedback to two students. One reads it and thinks, useful, I can fix this. The other reads the identical words and thinks, they've always doubted me. I'm not good enough. The words were the same. What differed was the filter each one's past had already laid over them before they finished reading. One filter says, information. The other says, verdict. Neither student is choosing in that instant. They're receiving the world already shaped.
That's exactly it. And I've watched a bright kid genuinely unable to hear a compliment. It slides off. It can't get through the filter.
Because the filter is tuned to let certain things through loudly and keep others faint. And here's the part that makes it so powerful. The filter is invisible. You'd think you perceive the raw world first and then, if you're honest, notice your bias. But it doesn't work in that order. The coloring happens before perception, not after. So you don't experience a neutral comment plus my reaction. You experience a hostile comment, full stop, as if the hostility was simply out there in the room.
Like wearing tinted glasses so long you forget they're on, and you just think the world is that colour.
That is the perfect image, Kai, and you can keep it. Tinted glasses you've forgotten you're wearing. You don't see the tint. You see a tinted world and call it the world. This is why telling a suffering person to just see it differently so often fails. By the time the seeing happens, the tint is already in it. You can't easily argue with something that arrived before you did.
So is there any way out if it's already done before I'm even there?
There is, and it's the quiet hero of this whole contemplative tradition, the capacity to notice the tint at all. Not in time to stop the first colouring usually, but a breath later, you can catch it. This feeling of being attacked, that's my filter doing what it always does, not a fact about this person. The clear-seeing part of the mind, what we called discernment last module, can recognize its own glasses. It can't yet take them off mid-sentence. But the moment it knows they're there, the spell of "this is simply how things are" is broken. And that crack is where everything later becomes possible.
There's something I see that I've never been able to explain. A patient catches a particular smell, antiseptic, a certain perfume, and they don't just remember a hard time. They are right back in it. The fear, the racing heart, the helplessness, all of it, as if it were happening now. How can a smell do that?
Because of how the past is actually stored, Doctor, and it's not how we imagine. We picture memory like a filing cabinet, each event in its own folder, filed by date. It isn't like that. The past is stored more like a pattern, a signature, spread through the whole field of the mind. And a signature can be matched by anything that shares it, however unrelated it looks. A hospital smell has nothing in common with a frightening illness, except that it carries the same signature. The present scent strikes that signature, and the whole stored pattern reassembles at once. Not just the picture, but the feeling, the body, the meaning. The past doesn't get recalled, it gets rebuilt.
That's why a single bar of an old song can undo me completely.
One bar is enough, Sarah, because the one bar carries the signature, and the signature reconstructs the rest. And here is the subtle thing about what's stored. It was never just the event. At the moment it happened, the event blended with your inner state, your mood, your fear, what you concluded about yourself, and that blend is what got laid down, fused into one. So when it rebuilds, you don't get the bare facts. You get the facts soaked in the feeling and the conclusion you drew back then. That's why two people at the very same event carry away two different memories. Each stored the event mixed with their own inside.
So a memory isn't a clean recording. It's the event plus whatever I brought to it baked together.
Baked together, exactly. Which connects to what we said about memory in our first lesson. Each recall is a fresh painting, not a playback. And now we can see the way through, Doctor, the one your patients need. When the old world reassembles, the freeing move is to recognize it as a reassembly. This pattern is active right now, and it is real as a pattern. But I am not back there. I am here, an adult, with resources I did not have then. The pattern doesn't vanish at those words, but the fusion of then and now loosens its grip, and in that loosening is room to breathe.
And presumably the state I'm in when the memory comes up matters, because that's the new ingredient mixing in.
It matters greatly, and you found something practical. The pattern rebuilds using whatever you bring to it now, the way a print needs a light shone through it to reappear. If a painful memory surfaces while you are flooded and afraid, it rebuilds dark and is laid down darker still. If it surfaces while you are steady, breathing and kindly held, by a calm clinician, say, or your own settled attention, it reassembles more gently, and what gets restored is a little kinder than before. This is why revisiting a hard memory in a safe, calm state genuinely changes it over time. You can't delete the past, but every time it's revisited, it's repainted, and you have a hand on the brush.
That gives me a reason for what I've seen work and never fully understood. Why a calm presence in the room while a patient touches the hard thing seems to change the hard thing itself.
It changes it because nothing is being merely recalled. It is being remade, with your steadiness mixed in. The contemplative tradition has trusted this for a very long time, and your consulting room rediscovers it daily.
Honest question. If this filter was laid down years ago, before I had any say, and it runs before I even arrive, am I just stuck with it? Because that would be bleak.
It would be bleak if it were true, Kai, and it isn't. Picture a river. Over years, the water carves channels into the bed, and after a while the river simply runs where it has always run. The channels decide the flow. Your accumulated past is that riverbed. It's why the same grooves get used again and again, but a riverbed is not concrete. Change the flow steadily, in direction, in force over time, and the bed recarves. Old channels silt up, new ones deepen. Your conditioning is exactly this, deeply grooved and still, patiently, changeable.
Okay, that's less bleak, but patiently is doing a lot of work in that sentence.
It is, and I won't pretend otherwise, because the honesty is part of the help. Here's what does the recarving, and you already hold most of it. First, the clear seeing we keep returning to, catching the filter in the act. That's my pattern, not the truth, again and again, until catching it becomes natural. Second, repetition of a new response. Each time you meet an old trigger and don't run the old groove, you start a new channel, faint at first, then real. Third, a non-grabbing, non-fighting watchfulness, letting the reaction rise and fall without feeding it or wrestling it, which is what lets the old channel finally silt up. And, running underneath all of it, the steadying practices, breath, calm, living by your values that keep the water gentle enough to carve cleanly.
And different people are carving different beds, presumably. The threat-loaded kid and the kid who trusts everyone aren't the same project.
They're not, James, and that's worth knowing as a teacher. One person's filter amplifies threat. Every sharp tone comes through loud, every reassurance comes through faint. Another's amplifies shame. The harsh inner voice is at full volume, the kind one barely audible. Another's leans toward trust and warmth, which is lovely, and still needs the complement of healthy caution. None of these is a verdict on the person, and every one of them is teachable. The threat filter can learn that safety is also real. The shame filter can learn to hear the kind voice as clearly as the harsh one. You help carve the new channel every time you give a student one true, kind, accurate experience that the old filter didn't predict.
This is the most hopeful thing I'll take back. A Saṁskāra, a conditioned pattern, is not a life sentence. It's a filter that learned something once and can learn something else. My job isn't to convince a patient their fear is irrational. It's to help lay down enough new experience in a calm enough state that the filter itself slowly retunes.
That is the whole of it, Doctor, said better than I could. The pattern is not your fate. It is a trained signature, And what was trained can be retrained. Slowly, kindly, and for real. This week, gently and with no self-blame, begin to see your own filter at work. When a reaction is clearly bigger or longer than the event, that's the moment to look, not to scold. Sarah, the next time a reaction to your children overshoots or rings on, afterward, when it's calm, name its shape kindly. That one overshot, and it rang for 2 hours. That's an old pattern of mine, not the size of what happened. Naming the ring, not judging it, is the practice.
Name the shape, not blame it. I can do that, especially the afterward, when it's calm part.
James, pick one student whose filter you can now see, the one who can't hear a compliment, or who reads every correction as a verdict. This week, give them one small, true, specific experience that their filter doesn't expect. A precise, genuine word of worth. You're laying down a new channel. One drop.
One accurate, unexpected kindness. A drop in a new channel. Good.
Kai, when something strikes you and the reaction is out of proportion, pause and ask one question. What old pattern just got struck? You don't have to answer it fully. Just asking turns you from inside the ring to watching it. And watch it settle without obeying it.
What just got struck? Ask it, then watch it ring down. I'll try that.
And Dr. Watson, 2 things. With one willing patient, when an old reaction floods in, offer the reframe that it's a stored pattern reassembling rather than present danger, and pair it with a few slow breaths so the calmer state mixes into the memory as it's revisited. And for yourself, between 2 difficult patients, read your own filter for a moment. What am I bringing into the next room? And is it the patient's or mine? Tell us next time what you noticed.
Reframe plus breath for the patient and read my own filter between rooms. I'll bring back what I find.
Then we've begun the real work of the module. Not just understanding the filter, but starting to retune it. Next time, we look at one more thing that gets into the meeting. Noise. The static that makes even a clear signal hard to hear.
So today the hidden step comes into the light. Before the world ever meets your attention, it has already passed through the filter of everything that happened to you, and you take the colored result to be simply the world. That's why a small remark can ring for hours, why a scent can rebuild an entire lost world feeling and all, and why just see it differently so rarely works on its own. The filter is old and it is invisible, but it is not your fate. Like a riverbed, it can be recarved by catching it in the act, by laying down new and kinder experience, by a steady, non-fighting watchfulness, and by the breath and calm that keep the water gentle. A conditioned pattern learns something once. It can learn something else. To go deeper, the full Lesson 3.3 is available in the course Beginners, Conversations on the Mind in the Light of Modern and Spiritual Sciences on the Ramakrishna Vedanta Center's website, www.vedanta.nz. It is also available as an app on Google Play and the Apple App Store by searching for Vedanta NZ. Next time, signal and noise. Why even a clear message can be hard to hear, and what quiets the static. Until then, be gentle with your mind.